The last word with Jonathan Capehart in for Lauren starts right now. Way to make me feel guilty. The guy's got to be in earlier than I do tomorrow morning.
I was about to say, enjoy those 6 extra hours of sleep you get to get, Ali.
I will be thinking of you the whole time, my friend. You have a great evening. I'll see you again in the morning, all right?
All right, Ali. Thank you very much.
All right.
Search and rescue efforts are underway right now for an American service member missing after Iran shot down a U.S. F-15 fighter jet over southern Iran for the first time since Donald Trump's war began. MS Now has confirmed that one service member was rescued as U.S. forces race to find the second service member before Iran does. Iranian state TV offered a reward for the capture and handing over of, quote, enemy pilots to Iranian authorities. A second American jet, an A-10 Warthog, is believed to have been shot down by Iranian forces today. A U.S. official with knowledge of the matter tells MS Now. The plane's lone pilot was safely rescued by American forces after it went down near the Strait of Hormuz. NBC News reports Iran also hit 2 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters involved in the search and rescue, and the official said there were minor injuries to service members from that strike, but all of them are safe. In total, Iran has caused 2 military aircraft to crash, the F-15 and the A-10, and hit 2 Black Hawk helicopters in a single day, less than 48 hours after President Trump said in his primetime address that Iran has been, quote, completely decimated. CNN is reporting that Iran's missile capability is also not completely decimated. Quote, roughly half of Iran's missile launchers are still intact and thousands of one-way attack drones remain in Iran's arsenal, according to recent U.S. intelligence assessments. 3 sources familiar with the intel told CNN. They are still very much poised to wreak absolute havoc throughout the entire region, one of the sources said of Iran. In a brief phone interview with NBC News, Donald Trump refused to discuss the search and rescue efforts in Iran. But he expressed frustration about some of the coverage of what is plainly an intense and sensitive rescue operation. Asked if today's events will affect any negotiations with Iran, the president said it would not. Quote, no, not at all. No, it's war. We're in war. In another interview with The Independent, asked what he would do if the pilot is captured or harmed by Iranians, Trump replied, well, I can't comment on it because we hope that's not going to happen, and ended the call shortly thereafter. Donald Trump offered no words in that interview for the family of that missing service member or the others risking their lives to find that service member. But at 3:20 p.m., he did post, quote, keep the oil, anyone? That is your wartime president, America. 13 U.S. service members have died, and at least 365 have been wounded. And one is missing in enemy territory after 2 U.S. military planes were shot down by Iran in the same day. A new poll finds 86% of Americans say they are concerned about the risk to the lives of American military personnel. But reading his social media posts today, it seems Donald Trump is worried about oil, now that the war he started has roiled global energy markets. Iran's parliamentary speaker today mocked Donald Trump in a social media post saying, quote, this brilliant no-strategy war they started has now been downgraded from regime change to, hey, can anyone find our pilots, please? Donald Trump, again, threatened to target civilian infrastructure in Iran, posting last night, quote, our military, the greatest and most powerful by far anywhere in the world, hasn't even started destroying what's left in Iran. Bridges next, then electric power plants. New regime leadership knows what has to be done, and has to be done fast. This comes just one day after Donald Trump praised a U.S. strike on a bridge connecting Tehran to western regions of the country that killed 13 and injured 95 people, according to Iranian state media. Iran's foreign minister responded in 2 posts on social media saying, quote, striking civilian structures, including unfinished bridges, will not compel Iranians to surrender. It only conveys the defeat and moral collapse of an enemy in disarray. Today, a group of 100 international law experts warned that those types of threats from Donald Trump would violate international law, saying, quote, "International law protects from attack objects indispensable to the survival of civilians, and the attacks threatened by Trump, if implemented, could entail war crimes." Donald Trump is also contradicting himself for the third time this week about how important opening the Strait of Hormuz is to ending the war, posting, quote, "With a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait, take the oil, and make a fortune. It would be a gusher for the world." That's after he spent the week claiming it would open up automatically once the war ends, and then pressuring NATO allies to just go in and reopen it themselves, promoting backlash from world leaders like French President Emmanuel Macron, who said, quote, "You have to be serious. When you want to be serious, you don't say the opposite every day of what you said the day before. And perhaps you shouldn't talk every day." Perhaps you shouldn't talk every day. The Wall Street Journal reports that control over the Strait of Hormuz will determine who wins the war. Quote, "Whether the war ends in a success or defeat for Iran depends first and foremost on whether Tehran emerges from this conflict still holding the strait, and with it, the keys to the worldwide energy markets." Gas prices continue to rise in a war that is costing the American taxpayer roughly $1 billion per day. 56% of Americans say the war in Iran will have a negative impact on their personal financial situations. But instead of focusing on helping the American people with rising costs, the Washington Post reports that Donald Trump requested $1.5 trillion in spending for the Pentagon next fiscal year, which would be the largest defense budget in U.S. history. Trump also outlined some $73 billion in cuts to non-defense federal spending, including cuts to health research, K-12 and higher education, renewable energy and climate grants, a low-income housing energy program, and community development block grants. Donald Trump said it himself earlier this week.
We can't take care of daycare. We're a big country. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. It's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection.
Leading off our discussion tonight, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He is a member of the House Armed Services and Oversight Committees. Congressman, always great to see you. Thank you for coming back to The Last Word. What do the developments today tell us about Iran's capabilities versus what the White House is saying?
Well, first of all, my thoughts are with the service members and their families. A heroic ejection from the F-15. I hope we get the other crew member. But this shows what so many of us on the Armed Services Committee know, that Iran, a country of 90 million, is a dangerous nation with a sophisticated military. And it makes no sense for us to have 7,000 troops in the region, for us to be putting our pilots and service members at risk. We are unnecessarily jeopardizing American lives. We've already lost 13 service members, many been injured, and we're unnecessarily hurting families here at home with gas prices up, with utility prices up, with the cost of farming up. We need to end this war. We need Trump to stop the bombing, Israel to stop the bombing, Iran to stop the bombing, and have a ceasefire.
Congressman, how concerned are you about this missing service member, given the comments that we've heard from the president that could violate international law?
Well, I'm very concerned. I mean, We have the technology now that allows ejections out of these airplanes, and it's extraordinary what our military has done. But the real danger is when they are in enemy territory, how they can survive. And the Trump escalation and rhetoric is actually putting not just this service member at risk for retaliation, it's putting all our troops in the region at risk. And let's be very clear. Trump is threatening war crimes. You cannot strike electricity plants. You cannot strike civilian targets. We don't do that as a United States of America. We are supposed to follow international law. That's the type of things that Vladimir Putin does. That's the war crimes that Netanyahu committed. And we need to be loud and clear that Donald Trump should not be threatening war crimes on behalf of the American people.
Congressman, let me get you to turn your attention stateside and find out from you, what do you make of Donald Trump's daycare comments given his astronomical budget request today?
Well, it's absurd. This is not America first. This is America last. I mean, he wants to increase $400 billion so we can spend on wars abroad. You know what I want to do? I want to spend that money on Americans. And he's talking about a 10% budget cut for Americans. Let me explain what that means. It means if you're struggling out there with higher electricity costs, now he's going to take money away from the electricity assistance. It means he's going to take money away from the health care assistance that families get. It means he's going to take money away from the money communities get to build roads and bridges. For the $400 billion that he's giving to the war in Iran, we could have free public college in America. We could have 1,000 new trade schools. We could have child care for everyone at $10 a day. We could pay starting teachers $60,000. I call it a new economic patriotism. He's about America last. I'm about investing in this country. That's what the Democrats are about.
Congressman Ro Khanna of California, thank you, as always, for coming to The Last Word.
Thank you, Jonathan.
35 days into Donald Trump's Iran war, and there's also a purge happening at the Pentagon. Yesterday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth asked the Army's top general to step down from his role and retire immediately. Army Chief of Staff General Randy George made it almost 3 of his 4 years in the position as a Biden appointee. The Pentagon confirmed the firing, but did not give a reason why. He's not the only official on Hegseth's chopping block. 2 additional Army generals were also fired alongside George. 2 defense officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity told the Washington Post. According to The Atlantic, quote, officials at the White House are also discussing the future of Army Secretary Dan Driscoll, a close friend of Vice President Vance. People familiar with the matter told us. One Pentagon official said Driscoll was expected to leave the department soon. Hegseth has been waging this purge of the Pentagon for weeks. Reports allege Hegseth has personally moved to stall or block the military promotions for more than a dozen senior officers. Hegseth's poll numbers show he has limited credibility with the American people. This week, before the firing, Hegseth's job approval rating hit an all-time low of 35%. That means 65% disapprove of Secretary Hegseth's performance in the middle of a war. Our next guest, Tom Nichols, is calling this Hegseth's war on the American military. In an article for The Atlantic, Nichols writes, quote, America is now engaged in its biggest conflict in decades, with thousands of troops headed into possible combat on the shores of a country the size of Alaska with more than 3 times the population of North Korea, and with a president whose only formal speech on the war so far consisted of 19 minutes of jumbled thoughts. The American people deserve to know why so many of their top officers are being tossed out of their jobs. Pete Hegseth has never shown a willingness to explain himself to the public, nor has he demonstrated the character required to take that kind of responsibility. But now that Randy George, along with other senior officers Hegseth has fired or pushed to resign, are about to be civilians, maybe they can step forward and tell their fellow citizens what on earth is going on in Hegseth's Pentagon. And joining us now is Tom Nichols, Professor Emeritus at the U.S. Naval War College. He is also a staff writer at The Atlantic. Tom, terrific piece. Thank you for being here. Pete Hegseth's purge of top military officials, what does it do from an effective leadership standpoint?
Well, it forces everyone else in the institution to have to scramble and, bring in somebody new and then get everybody up to speed. I mean, leadership changes, even in ordinary times, even in less fraught times, cause a certain amount of disorganization. But there's also the question that it raises in the minds, I think, of the American public, certainly in my mind, as you're heading into a war and suddenly as you're in the middle of war and suddenly the top army general is cashiered. And of course, the first thing you wonder is, did he do something wrong? Is there a problem? Is there a crisis? Is there some fundamental policy disagreement about the direction of the war? And instead, thanks to good reporting by people who have had to report on the Pentagon, despite Pete Hegseth's considerable restrictions, what we're finding is that Hegseth's firings are mostly about Hegseth. They're about his fear of being replaced by Dan Driscoll. They're about his crusade to prove to MAGA world and to President Trump that he's going to root out minority and female officers that he thinks don't belong in the military. I mean, it is really, it's really a way to create a mess in the middle of a giant military operation.
And because we're in the middle of a giant military operation, why is it important for the American people to understand why top military officers are being tossed out of their jobs?
Well, think about it. If you had a son or a daughter on their way to the Gulf or serving there now, and suddenly the Army Chief of Staff is summarily fired with no explanation, you'd want to know what's going on. You'd want to know why that is. Donald Trump is very frustrated by the fact that the public has never been in favor of this war and that his numbers keep dropping. Well, a big part of it is the utter lack of transparency from the White House and the Pentagon about why we're at war, who's running it, what's going on. And in the midst of all this, you have this incredibly unqualified talk show host firing people, loyal and distinguished officers who've served their country for decades and without a word of explanation. If Donald Trump wants the American people to be more supportive of what he's trying to do, this isn't the way to do it.
Using your expertise, talk about what would be going on behind the scenes in a functional Pentagon during a search for a missing service member.
Well, I think everything that's happening during that search is happening now, because regardless of what goes on with Pete Hegseth and the dysfunctional cloud of fog that he carries around with him, there are people who know how to do this. The military trains for this. They know how to do it. They are sending in the kind of aircraft and assets that can find and retrieve someone. They are sending in other aircraft to guard those aircraft. They are working around the clock with intelligence and trying to find their missing son. And so, I think people should be confident that regardless of what's happening in Pete Hegseth's office, all the things that you would expect from a highly professional military when it comes to finding one of their lost comrades is happening right now.
Tom Nichols, thank you very much. Coming up, what happens after you've been unceremoniously fired by Donald Trump? If you're Pam Bondi, your portrait ends up off the wall and in the trash by the next day. Literally. We'll discuss that and what you need to know about Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney who's in charge, at least for now, at the Department of Justice. That's next with Barbara McQuaid. Today, new photos are circulating online that show just how quickly things can change inside Donald Trump's Justice Department. MS Now has obtained this image of Pamela Bondi's official portrait at the Justice Department, already taken down and tossed in the trash. It's a striking image, an even clearer message. In Donald Trump's administration, as we have seen time and time again, your value is tied entirely to your loyalty and proximity to Donald Trump. Lose that, and you're not just sidelined, you're erased. Like that portrait, Trump officials are discarded like broken toys once Donald Trump has lost interest or found lacking in his eyes. Here's a headline Mother Jones used to describe Pam Bondi's tenure. Pam Bondi traded her department's independence for loyalty to Trump. Bondi was the first attorney general to operate unencumbered by any loyalty to the rule of law or any pretense of independence. Instead, she was liberated to act unabashedly as an appendage of the president. Not long ago, political interference at the Justice Department cost an attorney general his job. For Bondi, that sort of thing was all in a day's work. Trump is so bent on loyalists who will implement his agenda that he has undermined the department's ability to function. Now enter her replacement, Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Politico describes Blanche this way, quote, a dyed-in-the-wool Trump loyalist who relishes every opportunity to pick a fight on the president's behalf. During his year-long tenure as Deputy Attorney General, Blanche became the public face of many of the administration's priorities, including the installation of loyalist U.S. attorneys in districts around the country and its war with rogue activist judges. It's clear that with Blanche as acting Attorney General, the rule of law may still be in jeopardy, and DOJ independence from the Trump administration will continue to be near to non-existent. In a tweet, Democratic Congressman Don Beyer said this about Blanche. The DOJ is not a personal law firm, yet Donald Trump has installed another one of his former personal defense lawyers to lead the DOJ. Blanche oversaw the illegal firings of career civil servants for no reason other than their ties to investigations of Trump and traveled the cable news circuit to suggest the Epstein investigation is, quote, over. His blind allegiance to Trump is not a qualification for the job. He is wholly unfit to lead the DOJ. The big question is whether Donald Trump will nominate Todd Blanche permanently and fight for his confirmation, or keep him in the acting role to avoid scrutiny by the U.S. Senate. Joining us now, Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney and a law professor at the University of Michigan Law School. She is also an MS Now legal analyst. All right, Barbara, what's the likelihood that Donald Trump actually nominates Todd Blanche to become the permanent attorney general? Is that something he can do with Todd Blanche as acting?
It is something he can do, Jonathan. You know, the legislation gives the president a period of time. It's typically 210 days to 7 months to allow a president to identify a new nominee and get them through the confirmation process and allow someone to be the acting attorney general during that time period. But there's nothing that would prevent Donald Trump from nominating Todd Blanche to be that person. Now, if I were a betting person, I would say I think it's not going to be Todd Blanche. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is Donald Trump may like him right where he is in the role of the Deputy Attorney General, which is sort of like the chief operating officer of the Department of Justice. It's a big job and an important job. But I also think one of the things that Todd Blanche has identified with is the Epstein files. And I think at least part of the motivation in Donald Trump's dismissal of Pam Bondi has got to be this botched rollout, the horrible redactions, the mistakes that were made, the inclusion of some private information of victims and survivors, the exclusion of other things, and the fact that this has stayed in the news for the entire time Donald Trump has been in office this second term. I think he very much wants this to go away. And because Todd Blanche was so fundamentally involved in that rollout, I don't think that he can put this behind him with Todd Blanche in that role. So in my view, it seems unlikely that Todd Blanche gets the permanent job, even if he does stay perhaps as the deputy and serves out some time as the acting.
Barbara, you know who else seems to want it to go away? Todd Blanche. He's now trying to distance the Department of Justice from the Epstein files, telling Fox the files, quote, should not be a part of anything going forward. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, just what an idle wish And what an insult to the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual misconduct. We see reportings that continue to find names in there. We continue to find redactions in there. And it seems that the survivors are entitled to have the Justice Department thoroughly review those files and see if there's anyone else who can be brought to justice. I mean, he has been saying since last July, there is nobody left to prosecute. Well, let's see what's in there before we say that. I can understand why politically he wants it to go away, because every time people talk about the Epstein files, it raises this cloud of distrust over Donald Trump himself and provides a little bit of perhaps guilt by association, even if that is unfair to Donald Trump. I think he wants this chapter to just go away. But I think if someone were focusing solely on the rule of law, administering justice and caring for victims, you wouldn't be worried about how this may or may not harm Donald Trump politically.
So what can we expect from the DOJ under Todd Blanche? What kind of damage can be done in that 200-day period you mentioned?
Oh, I think an awful lot, Jonathan. I mean, already you mentioned some of the things that Todd Blanche was responsible for. I mean, he bragged at the CPAC conference recently about how he and others at DOJ had purged from the department anyone who had anything to do with the investigations against Donald Trump or the January 6th attackers. Those people did nothing wrong other than follow the law, follow the assignments that were given to them. And there's nothing improper about any of those cases. They are perceived to be people who are not loyal enough to Donald Trump. I think one of the things that Donald Trump was dissatisfied with Pam Bondi about is not that she was unwilling to go after his political rivals, but that he was ineffective. She was ineffective in getting charges to stick. And so if Todd Blanche is eager to prove his bona fides to Donald Trump, we may see more of that. You know, our system is designed to protect people from frivolous charges. I think that's why she was so unsuccessful in charging people like Jim Comey and Letitia James. But we saw some Truth Social commentary recently from Donald Trump going after Letitia James once again. And so it may be that we go back to the enemies list and we see if Todd Blanche can make charges stick. I doubt he'll be any more successful, but I think that he may be determined to try.
Barbara McQuade, as always, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Coming up, with gas prices going up and Donald Trump's war in Iran pushing up the price of pretty much everything, Donald Trump is worried about paying for his war. We'll talk about the Trump economy next. New labor data released today points to a stronger than expected rebound in hiring last month. After losing 13,000 jobs in February, the U.S. economy added 178,000 jobs last month, fueled in part by the end of a healthcare worker strike and warmer weather, and the unemployment rate fell to 4.3%. But that snapshot of job growth comes as new economic pressures are building. Oil prices are surging amid Donald Trump's ongoing war on Iran, driving up the cost of transportation, manufacturing, and everyday goods. The national average price for a gallon of regular unleaded gasoline reached $4.09 today. Amazon announced yesterday that the company is adding a fuel and logistics surcharge on third-party sellers that will take effect on April 17th. Last month, the Trump administration announced the release of 172 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to counter the rising prices caused by Trump's war. Today, Donald Trump's National Economic Council director appeared on Fox News, where he tried to blame Joe Biden for the high gas prices.
Joe Biden, he's the one who had the biggest release of the strategic reserve, and there was no supply disruption at the time. He was just trying to offset all those terrible energy policies and get gas prices down ahead of the election.
Okay, but that was then, but this is now, and what's now is West Texas crude, which is what we produce here in the U.S. We're a net exporter of oil. On February 27th, it was $67 a barrel, and now we're at $111 for West Texas crude. I think the question there is, what can our economy tolerate? How high can it go?
Well, you can see that right now our economy has so much momentum that it's humming along.
Joining us now, Heather Long, Chief Economist at Navy Federal Credit Union. Heather, you heard Kevin Hassett say, our economy has so much momentum that it's humming along. There are plenty of people in this country who don't think the economy is humming along, and certainly probably are not blaming Joe Biden for it.
Certainly not anymore. Not with those gas prices up $1, costing families $50 extra so far a month. So one of the big numbers that jumped out to me in the jobs report today was the wage growth number, which was the weakest wage growth we've seen since May of 2021. And that is happening. The wage growth is slowing just as these prices are surging, especially for middle income and moderate income families. And we're about to see likely 4% inflation again, thanks largely to this war. And the wages are not going to be keeping up with that. So you can see the squeeze happening in real time.
And talk about the squeeze, the share of working age Americans in the labor force fell to 61.9%, its lowest since November 2021. At the same time, as we talked about, the unemployment rate fell to 4.3%. How do you interpret that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jonathan. I mean, normally when we see the unemployment rate drop, we're cheering because usually it means more people have found jobs and found work. That is not what happened in March. What happened is what you were just showing. People just stopped looking for work. They dropped out of the labor force. And if you dig into the data, most of those people, almost 400,000 people who just stopped looking for work, were young Americans, ages 20 to 24, who seem to just be giving up because they can't find jobs. And that's the bigger picture here, is just this frozen labor market for a year now. Where people, there's almost no hiring outside of the healthcare sector.
Mm-hmm. The war is pushing up the price of fuel. Talk about how that has a broader effect on other things like groceries and beyond.
Yeah, we're all learning about all the things that the Strait of Hormuz impacts for sure. And people are starting to see it, not just at the pump. Also, the diesel price is over $5.50, and that impacts everything that gets transported across the country. You mentioned that Amazon is adding the fuel surcharge. They are not the only ones. UPS and FedEx and the U.S. Postal Service are doing the same thing for everything we ship. You've seen airlines start to hike their prices. You've seen the baggage fees. I believe United and JetBlue have increased their baggage fees in recent days to try to account for this. And you're right, what's coming and what's building is even more industries being impacted. And probably agriculture looks like the next one, with the fertilizer prices shooting through the roof. And of course, those transport costs. So everything from beer to beef is going to have a pretty rough next couple of months.
Let's talk about mortgage rates, because the New York Times reports, I'm quoting here, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage rate hit 6.46%. The mortgage finance giant Freddie Mac said that's up from 6.38% the week before and the highest since the first week of September. Mortgage rates fell below 6% before the war started, but they have been climbing ever since. How much could those numbers I just talked about affect the broader economy?
Yeah, this one's really painful to talk about. I can tell you in February at Navy Federal Credit Union, the phone was ringing off the hook. When those mortgage rates dropped below 6%, people were refinancing. That gives more money in their budget. We had a really huge surge in new home sales, new home applications. Things looked like they were finally unfreezing in the real estate housing market. And now it's just starting to really clam up now that we're back at 6.5% again for the mortgage rate. So that impacts people. It was supposed to be a great spring for home sales. We certainly had a good start, but I think things are really going to become a lot more tepid here as we move into April and May, and those rates just keep climbing. And that's been really unusual. Normally you see borrowing costs go down during moments of crisis because people flock to the U.S. Treasury safe haven market. And that did not happen right now.
Huh. You raised that point when we have to go. That is fascinating. I'll text you because I want to know more about that. Heather Long, always great to see you. Thank you for coming back to The Last Word.
Take care, John.
Coming up, as Democrats look to retake the House this fall, one of their most promising chances for a pickup may rest on the shoulders of a U.S. Marine veteran in Arizona. We'll talk to the candidate herself next. Nearly 5 weeks into Donald Trump's war with Iran, the Republicans are reeling. The Associated Press reports this is not the run-up to the midterm elections that Republicans wanted. A year and a half after winning the White House by promising to lower costs and end wars, Donald Trump is a wartime president overseeing surging energy costs and an escalating overseas conflict. The war in Iran was largely unpopular even before an American fighter jet was shot down in Iran, a development that dominated headlines on Friday and contradicted Trump's claim that Tehran's military capabilities have been all but destroyed. CNBC reports rising grocery prices in the U.S. as the result of the Iran war could be among the most politically damaging outcomes of the conflict just months before a critical U.S. election. And it appears Donald Trump's address to the nation on Wednesday night did nothing to ease any of the anxiety within the party, despite the many public positive reviews from Republicans. Quote, "What the hell did he just say?" one GOP strategist in a battleground state wrote in a text to Politico after the president's address. Granted anonymity to speak candidly, and I quote again, "A quick recap and a path forward would have been helpful. Instead, it was nonsense left for Sean Hannity to articulate." Former Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote on social media, "All I heard from his speech tonight was war, war, war. Nothing to lower the cost of living for Americans. I'm so beyond done." With many Republicans hitting the panic button, Democrats are eyeing which congressional seats they can flip this fall. And it seems their sights are set on southern Arizona. Politico reports Joanna Mendoza, a Marine veteran challenging GOP Congressman Juan Ciscomani in Arizona's 6th District, says she raised over $2.3 million in the first quarter of 2026. The massive haul, shared first with Politico, is the latest sign. The district, based around Tucson suburbs and the southeast Arizona desert, could pose a headache for Republicans as they seek to maintain control of Congress. The district is considered one of the most competitive on the map this year, and Democrats have carried it in recent statewide elections. Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego won the district in 2024, as did Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs and Senator Mark Kelly in 2022. This past week, Joanna Mendoza released her first campaign ad.
What we're seeing right now is complete chaos. People say you're crazy for jumping in to run for Congress. Why would you do that right now? I said, because that's exactly what I was trained to do in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, we have a saying, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. We need someone to fight the insurance companies and take on corporate greed so families don't have to. We need health care and child care that doesn't cost so much. People need opportunity, especially in rural towns like Eloy. I believe that the people of this district deserve better, and my son and all children deserve better. I'm Joanna Mendoza. I'm running for Congress because we need leadership from Eloy, not Elon.
Joining us now is Joanna Mendoza, Democratic candidate in Arizona's 6th Congressional District. Ms. Mendoza, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word. Tell us a little bit more about your background and what made you want to run for Congress.
Well, thanks, Jonathan, for the opportunity to be here today. And look, I'm just a small town, rural farming community type of gal. Proud daughter of farm workers. I grew up working alongside them in the fields for many, many years, many, many summers until I could legally get a job. And I joined the Marine Corps because there was no economic opportunity in our small rural community. And that still is the case today. I served for 20 years and I did 2 tours to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan. And after 20 years, I retired, came back home and went to work helping the communities in which I grew up in.
Ms. Mendoza, given your 2 terms in Iraq, just your thoughts on what's happening now, the service members who are on their way to the Persian Gulf, and especially the one service member who is still missing.
Look, I mean, what we're seeing right now under this administration is complete recklessness. There's a special trust and confidence that commanders and leaders have to ensure that they're not placing our service members in harm's way. And as a drill instructor who trained and made Marines for many years, I take this very personal because right now there is no strategy, there's no plan, there's really nothing to show that we need to be there. And so I would, again, this is one of the reasons why I'm running, because we need servant leadership. We need leadership who's going to be responsible and who's not going to necessarily put our troops in harm's way.
What are the issues you're hearing about the most from voters as you campaign around the district?
Well, we're hearing about the rising cost of groceries, and now with the war in Iran, not only is it impacting, the economy globally, but it's hitting us hard right here at home in Arizona 6, where we do have a lot of rural communities, and folks already get penalized for living in those communities because they often have to drive into town to get groceries, go to doctor's appointments, and they just can't afford the gas. So, we're all feeling the squeeze, and this continues to be a #1 topic. In addition to the war, the actual war, I mean, this district has about 80,000 veterans. We have a couple of military bases and lots of military families. And I will tell you that people are not happy right now with the state of our country.
Joanna Mendoza running to represent Arizona's 6th Congressional District. We've got our eyes on you. Thank you very much for coming to The Last Word.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we'll be right back. Before we go, a reminder that you can join me again tomorrow morning and Sunday morning, along with Jackie Alamany and Eugene Daniels on our show, The Weekend. Tomorrow, we'll be joined by New York Times bestselling author and political leader Stacey Abrams and Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, a Democrat of Pennsylvania, who's also a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That is tomorrow, beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern, right here on MS Now. That is tonight's Last Word.